Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So before we start, I'd just like to read out a little bit about you. Danielle Williams is a wellness enthusiast and a mum of two. She is passionate about supporting wellness and longevity by restoring one's energy levels through a range of modalities. In 2005, at a time when Danielle was at a crossroads in her life and career, she discovered the emotional and self-healing benefits of yoga when she attended her first yoga class. Through the physical postures, Danielle felt more light and peace as her body became more light and flexible. Moving the energy through her body helped her to change her perspective in life, and it helped her to see life with fresh eyes again. As a result, Danielle established Living Health Naturally, providing the healing modalities of yoga, breathwork, meditation, education on healthy eating, including naturopathy, sound healing, and emotional clearing. That's very impressive, Danielle. I'm sure
Thank
that
you
your
for
clients really benefit from that. So today we're really going to focus on how people going through divorce and separation can look after their health, because one of the things that happens in that process is that they're normally overwhelmed with emotion and feel a lot of anxiety in their body. And so one of the first things I always say, and probably remind them in every session, is that we have our breath with us every moment of the day. And
yes,
our breath can regulate our emotion and also help with that anxiety. So would you like to talk more about that?
I'd love to. So when we focus on our breath, so conscious breathing is what I call it. We take a long, slow, deep inhale and a slow, steady exhale. When we focus on that breath, what it does, it helps us to disengage from those not so pleasant thoughts that we might be having. So distracting thoughts, disempowering thoughts, but also helps us to let go of some of the emotional roller coaster that we've been on from the separation. So we can actually really bring ourselves back into more presence, back into harmony. And for me, it's all about finding calmness within, because when I'm calm, I can make better decisions. I can move forward instead of being stuck from past hurts, trauma, etc.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you. And also being overwhelmed and at the mercy of our emotions. Um, I know that it's somehow very difficult to know where to start first. So I presume you would say be calm, focus on the breath, and go inwards. And I often find that just naming the emotion helps a lot. Would
Yeah.
you like to talk more about our emotions?
So what happens is that we have a thought, and that thought was going to lead to different emotions. We're going to feel sensations in our body. And so in yoga, what I teach my students is that we could be in a pose and it's going to challenge them. So they might be shaking and sweating and going, oh, this is really hurting, quite, it's painful sometimes to stretch. And we learn how to breathe through that. So we learn how to, instead of pushing the emotion away, we feel into that sensation, we breathe into it, and eventually, when we accept what I'm feeling, it softens. It's not so, it's not, I guess, not so intense. It softens, and we feel that calmness within. So for me, when I do teach yoga or breath work, it's not just about getting flexible and strong, but we can take it off the mat and learn that whatever situation that's going on, stressful, traumatic, I can learn to calm myself down, my emotional state, by just focusing on my breath and just tapping into that calmness within.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would see it. So we can just let those emotions come up, let them soften, and then we can move on instead of coming from a heightened state, trying to make decisions from a heightened state. We never get the outcomes we want.
Yes, fantastic. And so that comes to the other section of this, in that it's really bad to suppress our emotions, isn't it? So would you
100%.
like to talk about what happens when we suppress our emotions?
100%. So when we suppress emotions, we know emotions are just energy. So when we suppress the emotions, we tend to trap them within our bodies, whether it's in the tissue, the muscles, it can be ligaments and tendons. And I do see a lot of yoga students, when we do stretches or breathing with the stretches, they can bring up a lot of tears. But what happens is when we constrict, so we could be feeling stressed, we constrict, we hold the emotion in instead of breathing it out, it causes our bodies to become acidic. And when our bodies become acidic, they become inflamed. And as we know, most diseases, the start of it is inflammation. So we start to feel physical or start to see physical ailments showing up. And then the next thing, we wonder why we're not feeling so good. And this all just came from a thought. A thought turned into emotion. We suppress the energy, and now we don't feel so good. We start to see anxiety, depression. We start to see irritable bowel, a lot of gut health problems because of stress. So yes, the emotions are really important to do the work around and to release them so we don't create illness within our bodies.
Great. And you just touched on inflammation. And through your
Yeah.
work, when people know that what is affecting them is inflammation, do you have, I know there's no easy fix and everyone is very unique, but could you suggest anything that someone could do just every day that might help that inflammation?
First one would be just to stop and breathe, because we want to alkalize our body. Some common stuff I find is even just a glass of water with apple cider vinegar or lemon juice in it to really sort of flush out the body, because you think about it, stress, it increases cortisol levels. And so one of the best things to help that is vitamin C. So that's why I do lemon juice and water. You know, obviously, when we're stressed, we're not eating healthy either. I find a lot of people go to carbohydrates, sugars, processed food,
Yes.
and that's adding to that inflammation and gut health. And unfortunately, you know, if you're stressed, you're not thinking about a kale salad or a vegetable juice. You want something quick, fast, your coffee, your alcohol, anything to numb the pain. But if we can get on top of this from the very start and learn that, okay, I could just do some breath work, I could go for a walk, I'll drink a little bit more water, we can actually probably avoid maybe getting to chronic stages.
Yes.
Start with some basic stuff. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And also, coming back to our emotions again, oftentimes people going through divorce and separation have children. And of course, it has a negative impact on the children, but also they pick up our emotions. So that's another reason to be able to bring yourself into presence and calm.
100%.
So do you want to talk more about that as well?
I would 100% agree with what you're saying. Children are very sensitive to their parents, and unfortunately, the parents are going on this emotional roller coaster. And unless they understand and see that, the children are going through their stuff as well. So they're picking up on our emotional states, as well as their little brains are still trying to process what's happening. And for me, as a parent, and I have experienced separation before, if I'm not present, I'm not in tune with my child and I don't see what they're going through. So I see kids acting out. They might start to slip in their grades at school. They might go in their own, retreat within themselves. So they become disengaged. And if we're not present as a parent and we haven't got our own emotional stuff under control, our kids could, go down a different path.
Yes.
And we don't see it. So for me, it's like always about doing the work yourself, and then you can help your children.
Fantastic. It's the old adage of putting the oxygen mask on first, and then you're in a position to help everybody else.
100%, 100%.
Now, just going back to day-to-day living, and if people are going through a divorce and they've got lots of things to do in terms of, financial things and legal appointments and so on.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to actually become settled. So if they wake up in the morning, what would you say is the first thing that would be helpful?
I would actually because a lot of times what I find is people will lie in bed and they just start thinking. They're thinking about, well, they might get on social media, they might start thinking about other things. And a lot of times they're just playing over the same story, which is not helping their situation. So for me, I always get up out of bed and I'll do a few rounds of breath work, just because otherwise I could lie in bed and just start playing on these stories. And I'm like, this is not productive. So for me, it'd be just sit and just focus on my breath. And I always say, get up out of bed. Because if you're still lying in bed, you're sort of not really, you're in and out of, I guess, a dreamy state and you're not quite ready. But there's lots of different breathwork techniques. But the best one I find, if you just need to calm the mind down, it's very simple. It's breathing in for the count of 5 and breathe out for the count of 5. And you start with that and you put your hands on your belly and you breathe in and you feel your belly expanding, the ribs, the chest, and then count it out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you really need to connect to the self, I place my hand on my heart and it's like I'm breathing into my heart now, and just trusting that I'll be guided and that the best outcomes will come. And I just breathe into my heart. So just sort of clearing the mind, drop out of the mind, come into the heart and just breathe consciously. And it just takes a minute and people will actually start to find themselves settling. Like anything, Jan, it does take practice. People think like, oh, just do it once, and they will feel a difference. But if you get really good at this breath, slowing it down, you're going to make a huge difference to the rest of your day. You just, the day flows better. You're just more present, you're more calm.
Yes, I love that. And I love the fact that when you do breathe and concentrate on your heart, that you tend to trust that the day will unfold in a positive way. And I think oftentimes you expect disaster when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Oh, and if you expect that, as you know how the brain works, it will find disaster. But if we can connect to the heart and just for a moment, just feel grateful for another day, grateful for this body, grateful for all that I'm given, truly feel grateful. We know there's a lot of research done on gratitude.
Yes.
You will actually draw and attract more gratitude or positives into your life. And I always say to every client, start your day on a positive note. Breathe, feel grateful, and then just watch everything just unfold naturally in front of you.
Fantastic. And also, as you go through the day or maybe even breakfast, would you, I know that you mentioned the water and the lemon juice. I think that's probably a very good way to start. And so would you have any tips in terms of food? I know that we all crave comfort food when we're emotional, but just anything that you have to offer.
So for me, it depends on the person. So if you're in a real stressful state, what I find is the blood shunts away from digestion. And so whatever you eat, even if it's healthy, you're not going to digest it. It's just going to sit in your stomach. So I think it's about tuning in to how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling very anxious and I've got a meeting, you probably want something lighter. You know, you might just go for a bowl of fruit and yogurt. You might make a smoothie or a fresh vegetable juice, something that's not too hard to digest. But if you're feeling fine, I always go, have a nice, healthy, clean breakfast. So you might do some eggs and some spinach or some avocado on toast. But it's really important for the person, if you're just at the beginning stages of the separation, you might be feeling very overwhelmed and things may not digest too good. So I'm not saying don't eat at all, but just tune into your body and see what it needs. So start off in a big glass of lemon juice and water. Just flush your body out. Don't start it off with, I know people always want coffee, but if you do, that's fine. But I just want to get away from those addictive behaviors, those patterns, just to mimic what's happening in your life. I just want people to be more in tune, how they're feeling and what they're needing right now. Because instead of going to buy just bacon and eggs and a big, heavy, greasy breakfast, you may not digest that too easily.
Fantastic. It's really interesting, isn't it? It always comes back to tuning into our body, and whether that's feeling our emotions or actually just feeling how our gut feels and what we think encouraged to eat by our gut, because I know for me, sometimes I really do feel it tells me, you know, to eat some more green vegetables or something like that. So tuning in for physical health, but also for emotional health.
Oh,
So
100%.
yeah, our body can really inform us.
Because the gut sends messages to the brain and the brain sends messages to the gut. So I always say, if your guts aren't flowing, you're going to feel shitty in the head. And if you're feeling shitty in the head, things are going to get bound up, or you might start to find they become very loose. And, 70% of our immune system's found along the gut lining. And serotonin is produced, that happy feel-good hormone is mostly produced in the gut. So it's really important that, yes, we focus on breath, but getting these emotions under some type of control. As you said, feel, just tune in. Oh, I'm feeling anxious. And as you said, label it, but breathe into the anxiousness. We don't push it away. We don't suppress it. I always say, it's like if your child was upset or hurt, you wouldn't yell at them and push them away and get mad at them. You would actually nurture them. You'd bring them in, you give them a hug and say, I'm here for you. You're safe. And then what happens? The child relaxes. The child takes a breath, and then they exhale, and then they feel at peace. And that's all we're doing with these emotions. Once they feel calmness, they go, they disappear.
Yes. No, that's wonderful. I think that's true. I think that more often than not, we want to push them away, but when we actually acknowledge them and name them, I feel that's half the battle. And also, one of the things that I've found too is it makes sense that I feel this way. Like sometimes we beat ourselves up because we're feeling in a certain way, but oftentimes there's a good reason that we have this particular emotion. So even just saying it makes sense that I feel this way may not make sense to anyone else, but it makes sense to me. And so I think that helps too. So just tuning in with where you are at.
100%. And with that too, Jan, with, as you said, just labeling it. But I have this little affirmation I used to say a lot: this too shall pass. Knowing that I don't have to stay in sadness, but it's okay to feel it. But this too shall pass, and it will pass as soon as I sort of acknowledge and nurture that emotion, and then it passes, and then we move on from there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Danielle, look, that's wonderful what you've shared with us. Would you have any parting words of wisdom for us?
I guess for me, it always comes back to self-care. When we do the inner work, when we take care of ourselves, we can take care of others. We can have those healthier relationships. And I find that we get better outcomes and resolutions when we do the inner work. Instead of coming from a place of anger and resentment, and we make very hasty choices. But if we can just do the inner work and take care of the emotions, we can get better outcomes for our children, for the separation, for everyone, for all involved. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. And if people want to find out more about you, how would they do that?
If they jump onto my website, www.livinghealthnaturally.com.au, there's my email address, my phone number. They can reach out to me anytime.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Jan.
Thank you.
Thank you.